I'm really enthusiastic about the fact that we had a great group of companies last year, and I feel like we even raised the bar this year. So when you're out there, tell those folks what a good job they did. I'm very proud of what's happening there. Some good news, we worked with Sarah Arvin on her jokes, so that should make the afternoon a little bit better for everybody. But with that, I'd like to introduce the guy who I'm very grateful to for the opportunity not only to lead the Tag Fintech Society, but for giving me enough wiggle room with this society that we've been able to do some things that were a little bit uncomfortable and creative and out of the box for Tag. So with that, I want to introduce the chairman and CEO of Tag, Tino Mantella. Tino. Thanks, Doug. Thanks.
How's everybody doing? Great. Okay. Nobody said it, but I know you're doing great. And so I have the privilege of introducing the speaker that's going to introduce our Lifetime Achievement Award. But before I do that, I just wanted to make a couple brief comments. I've been on the Tag job for now about 11 years. And I remember early on when I took the job, we started talking about, we had a whiteboard and I had all these smart folks from the different industries in where we lead in Georgia talking about how do we develop an ecosystem to build our businesses, build our community. How do we even let people know that we do have leadership positions in the technology space? That we're not just about peaches and pecans and pine trees and poultry and peanuts, but we actually have technology here. And just happens to be that there's also a P in payments. And we talked about the need for talent and the need for everybody to work together and the need for capital and just all the things, universities tying together and everybody coming together. We kind of run in parallel to that about 9 years ago, because most of you know we have 34 different special interest groups, and we call them our societies. About 9 years ago, I was approached by a community leader and said, you know, we need to start a Fintech society. And so we started it 8 years ago. I like to say we started Fintech before Fintech was cool. Now it's cool here, right? So now everybody's gotten involved. But you know, the other important thing is over those years, we have built that ecosystem, and particularly the Fintech Society under Sean's leadership and all the board members of the Tag board and the board members of that Fintech Society have done a great job. And we're doing so many different things, as Sean talked about. You know, isn't it impressive, the state of Georgia's Fintech ecosystem 2016? This was the brainchild of the Fintech Society. And then they said, we want to raise $50,000 and we want to create an innovation launch for the Fintech community. And this is our second launch, by the way. So Tag also has a business launch competition where we give away $50,000. And in fact, all 11 companies that we funded are still in business over the last 11 years. Let me say it again. All 11 companies that we funded are still in business over the last 11 years. I don't think many VC firms can say that, but Sean, but the other piece is that we're getting people involved. Like the state has come up with a program a couple years ago that we were involved with called Invest Georgia, which is a $100 million investment fund, and TTV, Sean and Gardner Gerard's group, is the first group, as I understand it, to get funding for that. So that's a terrific thing. Now, the state has slowed down on getting their funding, so if anybody wants to come to High Tech Day at the Capitol with Tag and help us be advocates to have the state continue that, see me or see one of the Tag staff, because we have about 50 people signed up already, but we're definitely looking to do that. And Tag's playing its part, so we hopefully everybody got Hub Magazine, something we started a couple years ago. And on the cover is Lynn Loby of Cardlytics, and it's all about a Fintech issue. Many folks in here contributed to that. So that's just an example of some of the things that I wanted to thank you for being a part of this community, a part of this industry, And it really does take an ecosystem, and looking back over those 11 years, we've actually made that happen. So you're all to be congratulated for that. So with that, I want to introduce our speaker who's going to introduce the award. And I just want to say that this award, as most of you know, has been going on now for 6 years. And just listen to the people that have received this award before. Jimmy Blanchard, Synovus; Pete Kite, Check Free; Paul Garcia, Global Payments; Pamela Joseph, U.S. Bancorp; and Phil Tomlinson, TSYS. And so it's an amazing group, and we're going to add to that group today. So now I'd like to call on the CEO and managing partner of HA&W. And HA&W, hopefully most of you know, is a great firm in town. And the leaders of that firm, including Richard Kopelman, who I'm going to ask to come up, are really good community-spirited people that want to make a difference, not just for their company, but for the community. So with that, I'd like to call on Richard Kopelman.
Tino, thank you. And good afternoon, everybody. As Tino said, I have been given the honor to introduce this year's recipient of the Fintech Lifetime Achievement Award and the latest inductee into the TAG Fintech Hall of Fame, Brooks Smith, founder and CEO of InComm. Brooks had a vision and created the prepaid card industry. He took InComm from a prepaid long-distance carrier in the 1990s and turned it into the world's leading prepaid payment technology and solutions company. This year, InComm will process $40 billion in transactions globally. There's a very rare aspect to the massive growth that InComm has had, and that is that Brooks has maintained equity control of the business since inception. While preparing these remarks, I reflected on my first meeting with Brooks in March of 2004. I was immediately intrigued by the fact that I had never heard of InComm, and at that time, very few people had. And that was because Brooks had a desire to keep the company very discreet. His passion for the industry and his ability to see the future of prepaid was immediately apparent. Brooks has taught me a great deal about business over the years, not necessarily how to read financial statements, but a great deal about leadership. Brooks has taught me the power of inspiration, ideas and innovation, how to set high standards for people, and how to inspire them to exceed expectations. He's a master at the art of harnessing the energy that comes from accomplishment and using it to energize the team to achieve far more than any individual thought they could. When he's not hunting big game at work, he is doing so on the ocean. Brooks moonlights as an angler, leading a different kind of team, Team Uno Mas, in world-class sport fishing tournaments around North America. This is not your weekend trip to Panama City to fish for grouper. This involves chasing the king of the ocean, the elusive blue marlin, who can weigh up to 2,000 pounds. Brooks is being recognized today for the impact he has made on the fintech industry, not just here in Georgia, but globally. His innovative ideas, he has named on over 40 patents, and the strong passion he has for the work that he aggressively continues today. Brooks, congratulations. Please join me in welcoming Brooks Smith, CEO and founder of InComm.
I'll let you hold that. Thank you, Richard, and thanks to all the folks of the FinTech Society and TAG and all the members here. Reflecting on, I was just reflecting some of the things Richard said. We had some interesting times back in 2004. You know, they asked me what I wanted to talk about today, and I wasn't really sure. And I'm happy to entertain you with fishing stories, which you probably would rather hear about than the prepaid industry, but maybe a little bit of both. And I'd also like to thank the team at InComm, roughly 2,000 employees, and the executive management team that's here today, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. So thank them. InComm was not my first entrepreneurial effort, and everybody asked me a lot of questions about being an entrepreneur. And all I can tell them is it's just really hard, and you got to sacrifice a lot, and not everybody's cut out for it. And I learned early on in being an entrepreneur that some businesses, basically, you create a job. If I wanted to be if I wanted to have a sandwich shop, I created myself a job managing a sandwich shop. In my case, my early career was in the health club business, and I had a few gyms that I ended up being part owner in, and I created myself a job. But I didn't create myself a future. And I learned from those lessons about running businesses. I learned that employees could be difficult. A little funny story about that. I actually quit college in my last year to get in the health club business. Mortgaged my mother's home. Just missed my mother and I. My father died when I was 12. Took a $50,000 mortgage out, took $25,000 I had in savings and bought half of this business. 2 weeks after I bought the business, there was a notice on the door from the IRS. The guy came to my office and said, "You're going to go to jail and we're going to lock the doors and take everything you have. You haven't paid the payroll taxes." I've been an owner for 2 weeks. 23 years old, welcome to the world. Here you are, 22, whatever I was. So I can tell you many stories of hard knocks, but I've seen them all. Years in that business, and I got out of that business, it was basically my partner died at 53 of colon cancer. We had $300,000 worth of life insurance on him. We owed $3 million. We had 10 or 11 health clubs. I looked at his wife and I said, "I'll take the debt, you take the $300,000. I'm gonna sell the health clubs, anything I have left I'll give to you." I ended up $100,000 in debt, gave the bank a second deed of trust on my house, got in my car, drove to Atlanta, Georgia, lived in a gentleman's basement, helped him start a boat dealership. And I lived in that basement for 18 months, and I worked 12 hours a day. And at the end of that time, he told me I owed him the money. He paid me back because we didn't make any money. When I asked to see the books, he said no. I said bye. What else could I say? At that point, I started doing some consulting work. I got offered a lot of jobs in the marine industry, even though I'd only been in it 18 months. I made a lot of friends. I got offered the presidency of super ski boats, head of sales and marketing for Monterey Boats out of Florida. Carver Yachts offered me a position. A lot of companies were trying to hire me, but I'm like, this was a great hobby until I came to Lake Lanier and got in the business, and now I don't want to see a boat right now. Lake Lanier was just a big mud hole anyway. I grew up on the ocean, fishing and with my dad and stuff when he was still alive. After that, I decided to really have a retrospect on being an entrepreneur and try to figure out what I had done wrong in my career and why I wasn't successful at achieving my dreams, which was to be successful, basically, just to have a successful business. And I thought about it, and I thought about all the mistakes I made. When I was in the health club business, I realized it was kind of like being in the bar business. A bigger, prettier one opens up across the street, and you're chopped liver. In my day, it was living well and Holiday. So, wow, we were selling memberships for $50 or $60 a month, and Holiday Health Club opened up in a glorious 2-story building, funded by Las Vegas, I guess, and charged $5 down and $5 a month for memberships. So it doesn't take, a crystal ball to realize what happens to your business when those things happen. And we watched while Brown Ferris Industries and Living Well and Bally got in a fight over that business share, and we just got crushed in the middle. My stint in the boat business, while I said was somewhat entertaining and fun, I met a lot of great people. It had been my passion for my entire life to be around boats in the water, but you couldn't have drugged me back to Lake Lanier, with a couple of tractor trailers at the time, because I really was so frustrated with it. After I started consulting, I started thinking, what were the things I really liked to do other than boating and other things and hobbies I enjoyed, fitness? The next thing I liked to do was tinker with computers. I loved my background from when I was in college and engineering and doing stuff with that. And I started to seek out opportunities that were somewhat in the wheelhouse of something I might enjoy. I also learned from all the people I met at Lake Lanier, by the way, and I'll thank all of them. There were gentlemen like Pat Thomas, which many of you might know from the industry. I got to spend a little bit of time with Pat on his houseboat, delivering his sea-doos, being the marina grunt that had to fix it on Sunday. I was the guy that got yelled at if it didn't work. And Frank Argenbright and Don Weber of Contel, they were all my customers. I got to meet some of Atlanta's greatest people. And I will say they were inspiration for me. It was, how can I be like them? How can I succeed and be different? And I realized that my next business opportunity had to be a real opportunity and not just creating a job. I had to create something bigger than a job. So I had to create a big noise. And I've tried to play back on the mistakes I made. You know, the health club industry, I had to rely a lot on my people. And I rely a lot on people today, but per dollar, per capita, small compared to what I did in the health club business. At the time I had 10, I had 5 losing money, 5 making money, 3 stealing money, 2 selling drugs. You know, it was all over the place. And it was constantly a churn. When I got in the boat business, I realized, wow, you know, we sold $20 million worth of product, we got $6 million with inventory, and we made 500 grand. And of course, I didn't get my share, but is it really worth the liability and the risk? And the first time the economy goes into tank, all those luxury items are the last thing anybody wants to buy, particularly at Lake Lanier. So I said, that's probably not a business I want to be in. I started doing some consulting around telecommunications, things that had to do with interactive voice response. I'd never heard those terms before. I didn't even know what a T1 was at the time, but I loved writing flow charts and doing the designs and things. And I got involved with that and helped some folks. And I was involved in some projects to do credit calling card. And we were talking about prepaid and what prepaid might do. Ultimately, nobody was interested but me. And I thought, wow, I could build a whole company around prepaid phone cards. Because at the time, I was still working boat shows on weekends to make a living. And I would fly to Miami and get paid to be a hired gun, or to Chicago or New York, wherever the big show was that week. And I always had to call somebody, and I always had to go to the payphone and pay $4 a minute. And I thought this prepaid calling card idea might be a great idea. And sure enough, I started InComm in 1992 to pursue that idea, thinking I could be a $10 million company one day. That was big at the time. And trust me, from 1992 to 2000, we still weren't a $10 million company. It was a very long, difficult path. In 1992, about the time I was supposed to open the doors at InComm, my only customers at the time, since nobody knew what prepaid phone cards were in the United States, were, I think, Bombardier for Sea-Doo. I talked them into doing a dealer locator with me. And I believe the Simmons Company, a few others, and a company out of Nashville that was dealing with weather product. And I had gotten contracts with them, and I had lined up a VC here in Atlanta that told me they'd give me $500,000 to start the company. 2 weeks before I had to open the doors and I'm operating on a T1 out of my garage, the VC said they don't have any money. So I had to go to start dialing for dollars, and I ended up with 7 owners in the company, and I only had 28% to get that $500,000 within 2 weeks. After that, I worked as the slave for 2 or 3 years with no paycheck. My benefactor with the $500,000 put $90,000 in and told me that there wasn't enough money. That was after 2 months. There wasn't enough money to run the company, so they wanted out. And I said, you signed a contract. You haven't even given me a chance. So they put in $200,000, and then they stopped making payroll. And after that, whatever payroll was made on my MasterCard, and I went to boat shows to make that money to pay those people. In 1994, I went to work one day, Tuesday morning, I remember. I'm pretty sure it was 94. I lose the year sometimes. And I walked into my office, and there was 2 guys in muscles bulging, pretty tight polo shirts. Capital Protection. Who are you? We're here to fire you. You've been fired. You're out. Clean out your office. What led up to this is the folks that put the money in decided they wanted out, and I was out talking to companies to take them out and take a minority share in the business for the same $500,000. I didn't need any more money. But my partners weren't very savvy or very smart. By the way, they don't own anything today. They got their 500,000 back then. They're pretty sorry today. Those folks decided to cut a deal with one of the folks I was talking to, who told them they didn't need me, just fire me and get rid of me, and they'd take the company and they'd give them $500,000. In fact, they were going to give them stock. It was a public telecom company. And so those folks proceeded with that. Tuesday, I'm fired. I go home. I don't even know what happened to me. Wednesday, I get on the phone with my lawyers, or I had to find a lawyer. And some of the employees were telling me what was going on. And I got a phone call. It said, Brooks, you need to sign over all the intellectual property and the trade names to us, or we're going to sue you. And I'm laughing. I'm going, really? Wow, start suing. Go ahead. What do I got to lose? You just took my life. I don't have anything left, so go ahead and sue me. And so they went away. The next day they came back and they said, we'll give you $75,000 and we'll treat you equally with the stock, fairly. I'm like, so yesterday you weren't going to treat me equally, but today you will. The third day was Monday. That phone call, because I told them to pound sand again. And thank goodness for good customers. One of them was General Electric at the time, was one of my larger customers, and they stood behind me. But most of my customers told them they wouldn't do business with them. Without me, they weren't interested. And on Monday, I got a phone call that said, you can have the business back if you give us $500,000 by Friday. Wow, that's great. Here, I'm excited. Now, what do I got to do? And I'll shorten this story up because it could take forever. I ended up with one of the other companies that I was talking to, which I wasn't really thrilled about or excited about, wasn't certain about where they were in the world or what was real about it, swapping out their place with the right that I could buy my shares back and do my own thing once I helped them. Made that deal, looked behind the curtain, said, wow, that's smoke and mirrors, I need to get out of here. I was there about 6 months and I was able to buy the company back from those folks who within 6 months went out of business and they went bankrupt. So I've lived through a few hard times. After that, I refused to take another penny from another human being to put in my company. Now you may say why, but I was a little gun shy, obviously. Finances were not my expertise, sales and marketing, technology, I know those things, but when it came to the financial world, I didn't understand it. I can count, but I don't know about raising money, putting money in, protecting my value. So I ran the business basically on profitability for years. As Richard mentioned, our early business was prepaid phone cards. We had to be the inventors and the revolutionaries about point of sale activation technology, which protected those cards and kept the value so merchants would actually sell them. This could go on, I could tell you for days about all the different things we had to sell to survive. At first it was promotional phone cards. We did millions of phone cards for ET, phone, home, and cereal boxes. We did anything we could to make a living in the day. And that did evolve into a retail business, which drove us to invent the postal technologies that we use today worldwide. And those technologies became the backbone of InComm, how we did point of sale and what we changed at point of sale, making it easier for merchants to sell the products, making it easier for consumers to buy the products. The greatest thing about that is, this is another little funny story, and my team will remember this. We were in a meeting with one of the largest retailers in the world. I'll just let you use your imagination. It was a great customer, many years been a customer. 24 people in a room, 3 or 4 of us and 20 of them. And I wasn't ready for this question, but somebody said to me, Brooks, InComm is always 2 years ahead of the competition. You guys know what's going to happen before anybody does. How do you do it? And I blurted out before I thought, I said, fear. Seriously, I said fear. I'm like, I didn't know what else to say. And he says, what do you mean? I said, I'm scared of going out of business every other day if I don't. I mean, it was like, wow, I had to reinvent myself so many times. It's like, what drives me is, we were in the prepaid phone card business. Guess what that is today? It's pretty much non-existent, except maybe some international cards in New York City and Miami, but the reality is cell phones evolved and that business went away. So in the late 90s, we saw the evolution coming and we saw the train coming. It was very close to the end of the tunnel and we were seeing death. And we said, what do we do with all this great technology had? And Phil Graves, who's here as president of InComm now, and I started knocking on the door, Sprint, hey, we got some great technology to sell prepaid. We can put that on your wireless products. And no, we're not interested in prepaid. We hate it. AT&T, no thank you, we're not interested. Hate it. Nobody needs that. And a little story for you on top of that. In 1992, when we started the phone card business, more than 30% of the US population did not have access to long-distance telephone services. What I call them today is underserved markets. When cell phones came out and you held them in your suitcase, you know, you guys, they're as old as I am, remember that. To get one, your credit had to be superior to credit that was required for MasterCard or Visa. In other words, superior than getting an Amex card, you had to have that great a credit, pristine to get a cell phone back in the day. But we had this brilliant idea that we could apply our technology for activating cards to wireless products that could expand the prepaid industry. And fortunately, one of those world's largest retailers had a vision too. And we sat in a room one day with their now CEO. I was in there with him. And I was hearing this terrible story about the horrible hotel he was in the night before because they wouldn't spend more than $50 or something. And we spent 7 hours talking about the wireless industry. And I spent most of my time talking them into being in the prepaid industry and why prepaid was going to change the marketplace in wireless, why it was going to become contractless wireless. And they were attentive listeners. This is in the year 2000. And at the end of that meeting, the now CEO, who was then a VP, said to me, "Brooks, what's your proposal?" And I said, I didn't really prepare a proposal. This is more of an education meeting, but I'm InComm and I'm this small. I'll tell you everything I get. You tell me how much I can keep. And he laughed and he shook my hand. And he said, "You got a deal. You go make this happen." So that really accelerated InComm's growth. That was really the cornerstone of us turning from a very small company into a very big company in a very short period of time. Along that same era, Phil Graves and I and the rest of the team sat around thinking at that point, as we reinvented ourselves, what else can we do with our technology? And what I'm going to tell you is there's no secrets, it's not rocket science, and it's not hard to see these things if you think about them. What happened to the CD in music? It got replaced by the internet and iTunes. In the year 1999 and 2000, Phil and I started talking about putting music on cards. When Apple started coming out with their program, we talked to them, they told us we were stupid. Nobody needed cards. Today, Apple iTunes, 1/3 of all they sell in the world are sold on cards or digital. It's a big number. After our first trial with a retailer here in America, and we finally talked Apple into it, and Phil remembers the story, we and the retailer had to talk them into it. They gave us all a 4% margin, and they made us pay for the card production, so we lost $250,000. They sold 1 million cards in December of 2004, I believe it was, Phil. And Steve Jobs got up at Macworld and said, "iTunes card, this is what we did, it's the greatest thing in the world." You know, I look at that and I go, well, you guys didn't do anything, but, you know, not exactly the visionary part there. But my point of that is Apple was no different than AT&T and MCI that didn't believe in phone cards, didn't believe in prepaid. The giant companies overlook the underserved customers and the way people like to do business. People like to buy things in stores, which is why people still buy cards in stores and don't download all their music digitally all the time. Now we have streaming, which is changing the world. But we're always evolving at retail. And you know, my job has been to challenge my team to say, what is that next evolution? Today, InComm is chasing transportation, tolling, transit. We're in healthcare. We have one of the best healthcare networks now with our Medigate program and our enhanced payments platform, which is doing substantiation, adjudication at point of sale for a single SKU level product. We've got some pretty brilliant technologies that we've been working on that are like no others. And people ask me all the time, what does InComm do? I'm like, oh God, how do I describe this? This is extremely difficult. I usually tell them, you know that big rack of cards in CVS and Walgreens? That's me. But that's not us. We do so many more things than that. And I'm very proud of all the accomplishments the team has made over the years and the things they've been doing, the things they continue to do to grow the company. I do think our opportunities as we go forward, far beyond prepaid into healthcare and tolling and transit, some of those opportunities we're exploring now in the network. But the one key thing I would leave with that there is the one thing we learned from our customers that taught us. One of those very big customers one day said to me after we were doing prepaid wireless and things, they said, What else can you do? Can you fix this problem for us? Can you help us keep people from stealing mobile phones? We said, yeah, we think we can do that, and we did it. We actually do televisions for them now. So we have a whole loss prevention division where we keep items from being stolen in the stores. Game systems, consoles, different things. But that light bulb went off, I think, for us at the time, and Phil and I talked about it, was really that, wow, we got a network here. What else can we put on this thing? And today I look back at what we've generated is we have probably the most unique financial network in the world. We're not constrained to the peering and banking system. We don't speak one language to a retailer. We have an open network between us directly and the retailer to communicate in any format we want, in any language we want, and transact any way we want. That's extremely powerful and extremely unique. So I'll leave you with that, and I'll leave you with one fishing story. My biggest blue marlin ever, I turned it loose. I caught it, I was 45 miles off of Caracas, Venezuela, about 25 miles west of the La Guaira Bank there, very famous fishing area. Birds everywhere, thousands of birds. We thought it was tuna. We put one big rod and reel out the back. We had the little dink poles with 20-pound test out, and the mate yells, "Grande Azul!" And we're like looking around, and this 5-foot fin sticking out of the water way back there behind the big lure that was back there, the rod with the bait. And I'm like, oh my God. And I picked up the pole and I held it, and the fish ate it, and I went like this 2 or 3 times. Fish did nothing. God, I sat in the fighting chair. We started backing up. I cranked on this thing. Hadn't really seen the fish yet, just this giant fin. Back up, and I actually stood up in the fighting chair, and the mate grabbed the 400-pound leader. Less than 10 minutes. I looked over the side, and I just started screaming and raising my hands like this. Oh my God. The fish was 15 or 16 feet long. He was farther across in the back end of my boat. He took off. He made one jump, I would say about the size of a huge minivan, today's minivan. Splashed in the water, and the hole was bigger than 6 of these tables put together. We got one nice photograph, kept going, fought him for 2.5 hours, got him back to the boat, and the guys had the gaff out to kill it, and it's like, I'm 4:30 in Venezuela, I'm not in a tournament, and I'm gonna kill this fish, and yeah, it may be a world record, but who's gonna weigh it? Where am I going? And I just couldn't bring myself to do it. You know, it wasn't for money, it wasn't for any other reason. It was like, no, I'm gonna let it go. And we cut the leader, and we put a tag in the fish, and we let it go. And all I got is a picture to show for it. And a couple of the, I think, oldest, bigger time fishermen in Bermuda and some of the guys around the world that have looked at it said it was a tonner, meaning it was weighed 2,000 pounds. It was the biggest fish I'll probably ever see in my life. But, and I'll leave you with that fishing story. Thank you again for the honor and your patience today, listening to all my stuff. Appreciate it.